B&E, which all of us who watch Law and Order knows that stands for breaking and entering, into a vacant property to sleep or escape the cold. Okay, that sounds kind of reasonable. All right, a vacant lot, it's cold, you're going there. All right, that actually on the list, you can understand the reasoning. If it's cold, you're breaking into a vacant lot. It's vacant, there's not anyone there to be hurt. You can understand that one. And at least she has the good sense to say it's got to be vacant, because that way no innocent people will be hurt, right? Well, what's the next one on the list? B&E into a non-vacant property to sleep or escape the cold. Well, what's a non-vacant property? Like, I don't know, your home? So apparently what she's saying is if it's cold outside, it is no longer a crime for somebody to break into your home, so they can trespass on your property. They can break into your home, they can commit larceny, and apparently sleep in your living room. Now, I want each of you to imagine, look, there's an element of how would you answer one of your constituents if someone is doing this?
Okay, so you just saw that clip. If that didn't get your attention, I don't know what will. What you're about to watch is Senator Ted Cruz on the Senate floor making the case against the nomination of Rachel Rollins as U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts. And I'll be honest with you before we watch the full thing. This one genuinely stopped me in my tracks. I know Ted Cruz is a polarizing figure. Some of you clicked because you love him, some of you clicked because you can't stand him. But here's what I want you to do. Put the name aside. Put the party aside. Just listen to what he's actually saying, because he is not speaking in abstractions. He is reading directly from official policy documents. He is naming specific crimes. And he is asking a very simple question. Should a prosecutor actually prosecute crimes? That should have an obvious answer. And yet, here we are. Stay with me through the full video, because by the end of it, you're going to have something to say. When it's done, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you stand. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. Let's watch.
The Senate is set to open at 10.
9:30, I think.
And, pardon me?
That's what I got, that information last night. It was 9:30.
9:30? But you have to go to the floor?
I have to go to the floor by about 5 after.
5 after? So the question is whether we want to take the vote and then recognize the two individual senators to speak as long as they wish. Is there objection to that? If not, as I noted in my opening remarks, the minority has requested a roll call vote on Rachel Rollins' nomination to the U.S. Attorney for...
Mr. Chairman, I actually would like to speak before the vote, because I would like what I'm saying to be considered when people are casting their votes.
Of course, the senator has a right. I hope he will recognize that there are colleagues of his who need to go to the floor. But please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think clarity is a good thing in politics and life. I think transparency is a good thing in politics and life. All of us, when we go back to our states, our constituents are interested in what we support and what we stand for. The question of the police, do we support the police or oppose the police? That has become an important political question back home. The debate over abolishing the police is sadly and astonishingly to me a real debate in today's Democratic Party, because there are multiple elected Democrats who vocally embrace abolishing the police. It's not just at the local level. It's not just the mayor of New York City. It's not just the mayor of Minneapolis. It's not just the mayor of Portland that advocate abolishing the police. Sadly, it is now senior officials at the U.S. Department of Justice, the number 2 official at the Department of Justice, and the head of the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. Both are among the leading advocates in the country for abolishing the police. Both, in writing, repeatedly and emphatically advocated for abolishing the police last year. 1 year ago, in writing, they advocated abolishing the police. Now, every Democratic member of this committee maintains, oh, no, I don't support abolishing the police. At the same time, every single Democrat in the United States Senate voted to confirm not 1, but 2 senior officials at the U.S. Department of Justice who are among the leading advocates of abolishing the police. And now we get a third time where, listen, our votes have consequences. By the way, I voted hell no on both of them. because I think abolishing the police is insanity, and I'm emphatically against it. That's an easy vote, and I'm very comfortable telling the people of Texas why I cast that vote. Now we have the nomination of Ms. Rollins. I'll confess, a week ago I had no idea who Rachel Rollins was. I'd never heard of her, never encountered her. Then I looked at her record, and it takes your breath away. We're dealing with an individual nominated to be a U.S. attorney in Massachusetts who has been vocal and aggressive against prosecuting crime. Look, part of abolishing police is getting rid of the men and women in blue that keep us safe. Another part of abolishing police is telling prosecutors, you no longer prosecute crimes. We're not in the crime business anymore. In other words, we, the government, almost always, and in fact, I'll take out the almost, always Democrats, say, given a choice between a violent criminal and an innocent citizen, we, the Democrats, choose the violent criminal. You may say, surely that is hyperbole. No one would be crazy for someone who meets that description to be the U.S. attorney. Well, let's look at her record. First of all, Ms. Rollins, in February, she was very candid that she came into the job of DA as a crusader. Here's what she said, quote, if you want to change the criminal legal system, become a prosecutor. Why? She explains why. Because you have, quote, the power to determine charges and what crimes to decline to prosecute. So that's what Ms. Rollins tells you matters about a prosecutor, the power to say, I won't prosecute these crimes. Well, surely she exercised it with reason and restraint. That's what our Democratic colleagues on this committee are suggesting. Well, let's look in writing, and I will say this document, it is entitled Appendix C, SCDAO, Declination and Diversion Policy. Boy, what an incredibly boring title designed to mask a horrific policy. I would encourage anyone, look, if you're watching this at home, and let's assume you have political leanings. You're a Republican, you're a Democrat. If you're a Republican, you're inclined to believe the Republicans on this. If you're a Democrat, you're inclined to believe the Democrats on this. Let me suggest something to you. Go read this document. I'll tweet out this document. Just read it. Read it yourself and then ask who's telling the truth. Because for all the Democrats saying, no. What do you mean she won't prosecute crimes? Let me read from the document she prepared. Charges on the list of 15 should be declined or dismissed pre-arraignment, so even before the proceedings start, without conditions. So we're not going to put any conditions on it. No matter what, just throw it out. We don't want to see these cases. And in fact, the next sentence says the presumption is the charges that fall into this category should always be denied. Always. So no wiggle room of, just in some cases. Always is what she wrote, even when attached to another charge. So if you have a multiple criminal, we just throw out these crimes. Basically, this is the prosecutor saying, I'm the legislature. Those pesky elected legislators that actually voted on the criminal code, I don't care what they say. I am erasing these crimes from the criminal code. Okay, let's see. Listen, there's some dumb laws. Maybe what she's erasing, I'll tell you, in Texas, it is still, I believe, a crime. Senator Cornyn may be able to confirm it, to carry wire cutters in your pocket unless they protrude 3 inches or more. Now, that actually goes back to the days of cattle rustling. If you had a prosecutor who says, all right, we're not going to have an aggressive wire cutter in the pocket carrying prosecution unit, I'd be good with that. So maybe the categories of crimes that she says are no longer crimes in my jurisdiction, maybe they're that kind of thing, the stupid things. Well, let's start. What's the first one on the list? Trespass. Okay, I want everyone to think about this. And what's interesting is this is not just in red states. I want the people of Delaware to think about this. The people of Connecticut, the people of Hawaii, the people of California or Georgia. Do you want laws against trespass enforced in your community? Well, according to this individual that the Democrats want to make the top federal prosecutor in the state of Massachusetts, trespass is no longer against the law. Someone comes into your house, onto your property, no biggie, ain't a crime anymore. All right, what else isn't a crime? Shoplifting. All of us have seen the videos, I think exclusively in Democratic cities, of shoplifters brazenly breaking into stores and stealing and stealing and stealing and running out. And why do they do it? They do it, for example, in San Francisco, because you have a prosecutor there who won't prosecute them. So you know what? Hey, I like stores where the price of everything is zero. That'd be a pretty amazing thing. Not very good for the stores, not very good for the community. But this prosecutor says there is no shoplifting. Now, if you want to steal a bunch of stuff, this is your person. If you're actually a small business owner, if you'd like to not have it open season on people breaking into your store and stealing everything in it, that might concern you. What else? Larceny. Larceny is not a crime. Remember that she said these should always be declined to be prosecuted. Larceny is on the list. What else is on the list? Disorderly conduct disturbing the police. So let me ask you, and the amazing thing is, even in blue states, in Minnesota, I promise you there are a lot of moms that are not eager to discover that if someone is drunk and screaming and trespassing on their front lawn and urinating and defecating on their front lawn in front of their children and cursing at their kids, that, hey, according to the Democrats, not a crime, won't be prosecuted, and by the way, when that person comes back to your front lawn tomorrow and does it again, it's not a crime tomorrow either. Remember, always decline to prosecute it. So disorderly conduct is apparently not a crime. What else? Receiving stolen property. So it's good news. At least she's analytically complete. The shoplifters can steal everything in the store. They can take it to the fence, and the fence can then take everything in the store. If you believe that theft doesn't matter, that's a great idea. If you believe in actually enforcing the law, that's insane. What else is not a crime under the lawless administration of this supposed district attorney? Driving with a suspended license. Well, listen, that sounds pretty mild. I mean, a suspended license, that's a technical thing, right? What's the most common area typically where people lose their license? For driving drunk. Or do you get your license suspended when you drive drunk? So if driving with a suspended license is not a crime, then apparently it is open season for people who've had their license suspended because they're repeat drunks because they endanger the safety of innocent people, of children. They get in a car and drive, they get pulled over, you don't have a license. Hey, no problem, keep on driving. Let us know when you kill someone when you're drunk next time. What else is not a crime, according to this radical? B&E, which all of us who watch Law and Order knows that stands for breaking and entering, into a vacant property to sleep or escape the cold. Okay, that sounds kind of reasonable. All right, a vacant lot, it's cold, you're going there. All right, that actually on the list, you can understand the reasoning. If it's cold, you're breaking into a vacant lot. It's vacant, there's not anyone there to be hurt. You can understand that one. And at least she has the good sense to say it's got to be vacant, because that way no innocent people will be hurt, right? Well, what's the next one on the list? B&E into a non-vacant property to sleep or escape the cold. Well, what's a non-vacant property? Like, I don't know, your home? So apparently what she's saying is if it's cold outside, it is no longer a crime for somebody to break into your home, so they can trespass on your property. They can break into your home, they can commit larceny, and apparently sleep in your living room. Now, I want each of you to imagine, look, there's an element of how would you answer one of your constituents if someone is doing this? And the answer from the prosecutor is, we will always dismiss the case. What else won't she prosecute? Wanton or malicious destruction of property. I don't know about you, but wanton and malicious are typically pretty bad. Ain't a crime under her. What else? You could say, well, at least none of these are violent, right? Well, breaking into a non-vacant property, that has the potential for violence. You know what else is not a crime? Threats. You can make a direct threat. You can threaten innocent people. You can threaten children. You can commit threats. Not a crime. What else is not a crime? Minor in possession of alcohol. Kids apparently drink like crazy guys, party when you got it. What else is not a crime? It's not just alcohol. Okay, you got kids with beer. All right, that's not the first time that's ever happened. Well, marijuana possession of marijuana paraphernalia. Okay, you've got some recreational pot. There's some jurisdictions that have legalized that, understand that. Well, but it's just the users, right? It's the low-level guys. Nope. What's the next one they don't prosecute? Possession with intent to distribute. So if you're a drug dealer, get yourself to Massachusetts. You know, it used to be that you had to pay off a prosecutor and have a corrupt prosecutor on the payroll to get out of jail. Now you've got someone who's just openly saying, drug dealers, come to Massachusetts because we don't prosecute people for possession with intent to distribute. And by the way, you might say, well, it's just marijuana. There are a lot of places that say marijuana is not too bad. Well, what's the next one on the list? Non-marijuana drug possession. So, could be pot, could be, I haven't studied the details of that crime, but I'm assuming non-marijuana drug possession includes heroin, includes crack, includes cocaine, includes fentanyl, PCP, LSD, all of those. Hey, if you got kids, a lot of us on this committee have kids, I don't know, I would be kind of dismayed by a prosecutor who says if there's a drug dealer in my kid's school with a backpack full of fentanyl selling it to other kids, we're not going to prosecute him. But apparently the Democrats on this committee are not dismayed. And by the way, on the question of do you support cops or not, the last one on this list is really incredibly revealing. Resisting arrest. Police officer goes, confronts someone who's violent. They're violent. They engage with them. They resist arrest. What's the prosecutor say? Man, it really stinks to be you. I'm sorry you chose to be a cop. But it's open season. Apparently, resisting arrest is now the standard way of interacting with the police in Massachusetts. This is lunacy. And by the way, to make clear that her policy of not prosecuting anything is consistent with her advocacy of abolishing the police, here's what she said at an earlier public gathering. Rollins also spoke about the much-discussed concept of defunding the police. Okay, let's find out. Where is she on defunding the police? She said that defund is not the verb she would use. Okay, that's good. I'm sure every Democratic talking point is going to take that portion of the statement. She wouldn't use the verb defund, but rather reimagine. Okay, reimagine may be good, may be bad, hard to tell, or reallocate. Now, anyone who knows anything about defund means take the money out of, get away their funding. Reallocate means take the money away, get away their funding. And she explains, she elaborates on this. I think we're asking the police to do far too much. I think we can reimagine and reallocate some funding, take money away from the cops. Those are her views, and I'll give you, to have a sense of just how extreme this nominee is, I want to point to Art Acevedo. Senator Cornyn knows Art Acevedo. He used to be the chief of police in Austin. He used to be the chief of police in Houston. He's now in Miami. Art is a Democrat. He is a partisan Democrat. Art is an ambitious partisan Democrat. He has his eyes on higher office. No one has ever missed that about Art. Art is now the president of the Major Cities Chiefs Association. I've had a lot of disagreements with Art Acevedo. Here's what liberal Democrat Art Acevedo says about Rachel Rollins. Quote, people like Ms. Rollins are, quote, going so far that we're putting the criminal and their interest in front of the victim's interest. So I started these remarks by saying transparency matters. I assume moments from now we're going to vote, and we're going to have a party line vote, and every Democrat just going to go ahead and vote for this candidate. You're not going to have listened to anything the Republicans have said, and then you're going to go tell your constituents, what do you mean? I don't support abolishing the police. Well, transparency matters. You now know her record. If you believe that we should actually prosecute crimes, if you believe that people shouldn't trespass on your property at home, shouldn't be able to break into your home, shouldn't be able to shoplift, shouldn't be able to resist arrest, shouldn't be able to commit threats and have someone who is ostensibly the prosecutor immunize them and allow that conduct, then there's only one thing to do, which is vote. And let me say, I find it amusing we're having an argument about whether this is a roll call vote or not. I agree it should be a voice vote, and we should unanimously reject this nominee. That would be, if we were in the land of reason, that's what we would do. But we're instead in partisan polarization, and so every Democrat will happily, like Pravda, vote aye, and then pretend you didn't. But facts are stubborn things, and anyone who reads this document knows exactly what kind of radical this prosecutor is.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Senator Blumenthal, may we take the roll call vote?
Absolutely.
All right, now you've seen the whole thing. Watching it back in full, it hits even harder the second time. Because when Cruz lays it out piece by piece, you realize this isn't a political speech dressed up as a legal argument. This is the legal argument. And it's hard to dismiss. Credit where it's due. Cruz came prepared. He didn't walk in with talking points and vibes. He walked in with a document. A specific, official policy document written by Rachel Rollins herself. And he read from it. He even said he'd tweet it out and encouraged everyone watching to read it themselves. In a world of spin and counterspin, that's a level of transparency you don't always see in these hearings. Now the list. The 15 crimes she said should always be declined to prosecute. That's where this gets real. Trespass, shoplifting, larceny, receiving stolen property, disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, threats, breaking and entering into a non-vacant property, meaning someone's home, drug possession, including possession with intent to distribute. And the word she used wasn't sometimes. It wasn't use your discretion. It was always decline. No conditions, no exceptions. I've heard the counterargument. Prosecutors have discretion. The system is overcriminalized. There are bigger fish to fry. And honestly, there's some truth to that in a narrow sense. Cruz even acknowledged it. He joked about wire cutter laws in Texas. He's not saying every law on the books is sacred. But there is a massive difference between quietly deprioritizing a truly victimless technicality and putting it in writing that crimes like larceny, threats, and breaking into people's homes will always be thrown out. That's not discretion anymore. That's policy. That's rewriting the criminal code without ever being elected to do so. And that point about the legislature really landed for me. In a democracy, we elect people to write the laws and other people to enforce them. When a prosecutor decides they simply won't enforce certain laws, they're not exercising discretion. They're overriding the democratic process entirely. And that should concern everyone regardless of where you sit politically. The resisting arrest piece is hard to get past too. An officer responds to a violent situation, puts themselves in danger, and if that person resists, the standing policy is to throw it out. Always. Think about what that communicates to people on the street. Think about what it communicates to the officers themselves. That's a recruiting crisis and a public safety crisis wrapped into one policy decision. Then Cruz brings in Art Acevedo, a Democrat, a liberal career politician, who says people like Rollins are putting criminal interests ahead of victims. When your own side's police chiefs are saying that about you, that's not a partisan attack. That's a substantive indictment of your record. Now, on the politics of it, Cruz was right that it was always going to be a party line vote. And it was. Rollins was confirmed. But I think what Cruz was really doing wasn't trying to change votes because he knew he couldn't. He was creating a record. He was saying, when you go home and tell your constituents you support law enforcement, remember this vote, remember this document, remember this moment. In a democracy, forcing that kind of accountability even from the minority is a legitimate and important thing to do. Look, I'm not telling you Ted Cruz is perfect. His record is complicated, and reasonable people disagree with him on plenty. But on this specific argument, on this specific day, with this specific document in his hand, he was right. And more importantly, he was clear. And clarity, like he said himself, is a good thing in politics and in life. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think prosecutorial discretion has gone too far, or do you think Cruz was overstating the case? And if you're new here, subscribe because this is exactly the kind of thing we get into on this channel.